coins, silver bars, tokens, stamps, and memorabilia. I have some up here. On them, at the very end, we'll talk about some myths and ghost stories and supernatural and faith traditions that have become folklore. And then everyday life, modern culture. Josh, is that just gonna roll? Would you mind flipping the same? Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, and I do have a few things to kind of help me share this stuff. So let's see. Josh just came back from South and Central America, climbing mountains, surfing, all kinds of stuff. Some of the folk heroes we won't see up here tonight include John Wayne. He's a modern day folk hero because as an actor he portrayed some of these people that are real folk heroes, and now people think of John Wayne. Some of his legend has grown already, so he might be an example of a modern folk hero. Whereas if you look at people from the past, you might consider Hercules from the old Greek tradition, from Alexander the Great days, as a folk hero that's lasted for a long time. We still talk about Hercules, but he goes way back, 400, 500 BC. And then what about some of our presidents we're not going to talk about? Who's on a $1 bill?
George Washington?
Yes. Who is on a $2 bill?
Jefferson.
Jefferson. And who's on a $5 bill? Abraham Lincoln. So is Abraham Lincoln have any folklore associated with him?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, he sure does. And George Washington, did he really chop down that cherry tree? Did the Indians really try to shoot at him and their crack shots couldn't get him, so the chief ordered him to stop shooting at George Washington? Said he's protected. So this is folklore that we're not going to even cover tonight. Then we have guys like Benjamin Franklin. Never became a president. I'll pass this coin around. It's a beautiful coin.
What bill is he on?
The 100.
There you go.
I'll take one of those.
And then there's a guy Ulysses S. Grant. What bill's he on? 50. The Grant's on the 50.
Guess who's on the 1,000?
Yeah, you did.
So Grant's also on this horse. I'll pass this around. Stone Mountain. So it's Grant and Lee, the two generals that fought each other, but they did respect each other as well. That's a U.S. commemorative coin. How about in Mexico? We're now very close with Mexico. A lot of intertwining cultures. There's Latin American folk heroes in America. Some were priests, faith healers. Some were Chavez, who organized the farm workers. And so we have folk heroes that aren't really born in America, but came to America, worked hard, developed a following, a trust among people, and helped people, at least some aspect of society. But also down in Mexico, you have the ball player. And the ball player, in this case, is dressed up in a costume. And this is a silver Olympic coin from 1968. And it's got the ball player. You can really see he became a folk hero, kind of like not an individual, but think like the Tuskegee Airmen. We have a quarter. Who else, what other groups can you think of are kind of folk heroes? How about the old basketball guys that played, they did all the tricks, who were they?
Oh, the Globetrotters.
Globetrotters are definitely folk heroes, modern folk heroes. So you have old, new, America, and every country, every region of the world has folk heroes. What else do I have to show? Oh, so if you look at the United States Book of Coins, I just bought this, and you look for folk heroes in it, you might see this guy, William Pitt. William Pitt was a friend of America back in England. And there weren't a lot of friends of America, independent America back in England, but he was to some extent. So he might be considered a folk hero to the old Americans, maybe not today so much. And then George Washington. You know how many medals gold, bronze of George Washington there are, but we already talked about him on the $1 bill. And then so I was just flipping through this, and then when you get to this Westward Journey set of coins, I'm going to give a set away tonight. It's got Thomas Jefferson. It's got this buffalo. Well, that buffalo is patterned after a real buffalo with a real name, and now I'm forgetting that real buffalo's real name, but kind of a folk hero buffalo. Can animals be folk heroes?
Yeah.
Name one besides the buffalo.
Smoky Bear.
Smokey Bear. I like it.
Oh, Bart the Bear.
Bart, okay. Great.
Woodsy Owl.
Hey, boo-boo, another picnic basket? I like that old show. Fred Flintstone. But definitely animals can't. Brer Rabbit. So we're going to talk about Brer Rabbit, Brer Dog, Brer Fox. Those came from Africa, but they became all throughout America's children's books as an example of the little guy with brains being able to outsmart the big guy with not as many brains. Yeah. And so there's a moral and a lesson in folklore, as well as just a story. All right, what else do I have here to show and tell? Don't want to forget our sponsors. We got a lot. CoinZeo here, Russ Coin and Gift, now Free Water down in Provo. We got all about coins. We've got this really cool shop with rocks and minerals, and they gave us a bunch of coins. I'm slowly giving it out that somebody gave them. We have online guys like this guy has very interesting stuff. That's why he calls his newsletter Interesting Stuff. But he's got coins real cheap. Joel Anderson. I flew with his son-in-law in F-15s. Great guy. Great thing. Feel free to take these. I get one every month, and you can get stuff in here for $5, $6. That's pretty cool. And then this is a Heritage Auctions. Heritage Auctions is a sponsor. They sent us a coin to give away, but they also sent us a bunch of stuff. And Josh, can you? I pulled a muscle in my back. So I'm gonna open this box and I'm gonna put it on this thing and help yourself. There's bags, there's pens, pencils, all kinds of stuff. Heritage Auctions does big auctions. I've auctioned a few things out there. But if you have a high-end coin you want to get the most money for, they'll get the best price. What about the Pilgrims? Could they become folk heroes as a group? Absolutely.
Mark and I both are descended from a pilgrim who was on the Mayflower.
Probably why I bought these coins. But these are two silver commemoratives I've had for a long time. 1920, 1921, and they show the pilgrim in his pilgrim hat. And on the back, they also produced the first constitution in the USA called the Mayflower Compact. And then there's the boat, the Mayflower, on the back. And yeah, I'll just pass one of these around. Make sure Josh gets them at the end, would you? What about a guy named Teddy Roosevelt? Would you consider him a folk hero? Yeah, I mean, we have national parks, largely in part to him and John Muir, the California naturalist. And this is a 5-ounce silver coin with, yeah, I do want this back, Teddy Roosevelt. And silver's gone up, but he's on a horse, and he was a man's man. I guess he's a woman's man too, but he wasn't married. So that's Teddy Roosevelt. He was actually born with an asthmatic condition, but worked hard, boxed, got over it, served in a couple of battles, fought well, could really ride a horse, and became a president. Almost twice.
Here's a trivia question.
Like the
Who
whole
was
set,
the only
like this stuff.
president of the United States to be awarded the Medal of Honor?
This says Grant? Grant?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. I would have guessed Grant. Okay, we have some cool bookmarkers. That's the American folklore. I say folklore. So I piled a bunch here. If you need a bookmarker, it says folklore after tonight. If I haven't scared you to death or bored you to death, it'd be great. There's that Westward Ho, Nichols of the 20th Century set. go around. I end up auctioning that out tonight for free. Questions? Also, what about, we talked about US presidents becoming folklore, folk hero status. What about their wives? Martha Washington. George Washington went off to war. She had to take everything out of the White House because the British were coming. She was an amazing lady. Betsy Ross, Dolly Madison, Abigail Adams, is probably tougher than her husband. She was pretty tough. So that's a set of bronze coins with American gals. Another country very close to us, England. This is just donated to the club by the library. Somebody returned it with some books. Lady Diana. And she did a lot of work in England with young people. Started programs to help them out before she was tragically killed in a car accident. So that would be an example of a modern folk hero. And we'll see what happens down the line. And last but not least, actually, how about this guy, Ronald Reagan? Would he be a folk hero? Pass him around. I got this millennial collection given to me, and there's only one folk hero from America. There's Mother Teresa, but she came from Slovakia, I think. Macedonia, thank you. Well, there's Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, that's helpful, thank you.
So what saying did Muhammad Ali have that became famous?
Look like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
That's it. So he's a folk hero.
Became a movement.
So by golly, that's the end of the presentation. Good night.
I thought that was,
Oh, no.
All right, well, now we'll get to the heart of it, but like I said, we're not gonna be able to cover every one of these guys.
they'll say that.
That's the name of it.
I'm gonna turn this light off again. Hopefully you can see the coins. If not, you can walk over to the light over there if you need to. Feel free to move around if you get tired. So we see a lot of things up here. Geronimo, he was definitely has folk hero status, folklore status. And this is Washington Irving. Not only did he write The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but he wrote another book that is in American folklore. We'll get to that briefly. Okay, so I'm going to just go through these things. All right, Josh, I want to put you back for that. Thank you for doing that. Let me go one more. Josh didn't know I was going to be putting him to work tonight. So how do you define folklore? We kind of just did that with what we just did. Consists of stories, customs, beliefs passed down orally, usually at first orally, or through cultural practices across generations. So we mentioned the ancient Greeks with Hercules, and then shaping social identity. That's what folklore does. It shapes who's our heroes, become who we want to be sometimes. Like if you're going to work in the lumber industry, maybe a Paul Bunyan or a Joe Maganac or one of those guys we'll talk about later might become part of that social identity that you have. Like some of these folk heroes are only known within their steelworkers or lumber or Appleseed planters, except everybody knows about Johnny Appleseed. And they share morals. We talked a little bit about that, how the little guy can defeat the big guy or outsmart him with Brer Rabbit tales. And we'll look briefly at some of this stuff and not at all at other, but we will get most, thanks Josh. Josh is doing double duty, making gift bags up for you guys. Okay, multicultural, definitely. Native American, European, Latin American, African immigrants. Any immigrants can bring folklore that then becomes American folklore over time. And then South, Midwest, West. So you have Butch Cassidy in the West, Sundance Kid. But in the East, you have Johnny Appleseed. And then you also have Healer Priest. You have Mother Teresa, even though she's not from America. She's identified. Some people think she's from America. She's not. Okay. This again. Okay. Legendary figures and tall tales. Gave out one of those coins tonight because Dylan may not be able to stay the whole night. Sacagawea. I'm not going to really talk much about it, but I will right now. Who was Sacagawea? So she helped who?
I was also.
Lewis and Clark? Yeah. If it wasn't for her, they would never got to Oregon, I guarantee it. And,
She was their translator.
there they are, they're together. Okay, Betsy Ross, the flag, Grant, and who's that, Daniel Boone. Okay, we'll learn to identify these people as we go. All right, first one. That's some of the folk hero folklore from America, A through M. The ones in yellow are ones I may or may not talk about tonight, or there may or may not be a coin of them in here, or an ingot or a coin going around. Okay, I'm not gonna really spend a lot of time on that slide. I just want to show you the volume of American folklore. This is N to Z. We got Batman and Robin. I didn't put Superman in there, did I? Should have. Rip Van Winkle.
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris. All right, I'll add Superman next time. Hey, the good thing about this presentation is one of you guys can do the next one on the ones that I didn't cover. Because this is probably a 3-presentation topic when we get the right coins, and I can get some giveaways. We can have a lot of fun with it down the road. Okay, next one.
I already did this next slide. Let's go backward.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
John.
Uh-oh, it's not doing that. Oh, it's because I hit the wrong one. I know nothing about Pecos Bill. Does anybody know anything about Pecos Bill?
Rode a tornado. He the guy?
Yeah, he's one of our first superheroes or folk heroes. Actually, who was the first? Does anybody know? His real name is Joaquin Murrieta. Zorro. Zorro is really the first American folklore superhero. But this guy may well be the second. The legendary cowboy figure, as it says up here, with wild exploits, larger than life stories of frontier bravery. So they represent something other than themselves. They represent the Wild West, of all its hazards and toils and danger and death. Just look at the Mormon Trail, the Oregon Trail, the California Trail. A lot of people that started it never made it, just like the Pilgrims. Some of them never made it, like half of them. So Pecos Bill embodies that rugged individualism, pioneering spirit central to our frontier mythology, really central to the West, where we are. Thanks. John Henry, still driving man. I think railroads. Obviously a symbolic folk hero. Strength, determination, resilience. And this is during the industrialization. When we first had the California Gold Rush, there were no railroads. So they had to take wagon trains. Then ships, and then clipper ships, sailing ships, and then steamships with sails, the side paddle steamships. A couple of my gold coins came from those ships that never quite made it, they sank. So it represents that period of time, say 1849 on. And so John Henry highlights the competition between man and machine. So theoretically, he was laying down tracks so fast, and so he became a role model for other railroad workers in a sense. They all wanted to be strong and really get a lot done. John Henry next. Okay, Paul Bunyan, lumberjack folk hero, absolutely. So up north, Canada, it's based on a real person way back when. They believe he was a French-Canadian guy. But he also symbolized the super strong lumberjacks that would fell a lot of trees in a day and then have to cut them up and haul them down the rivers to barges or flatboats. Of course, this guy got really blown out of proportion. That's amazing timber gathering abilities, companions like blue ox, entertained and squared loggers and snowy camps. They say his skillet for cooking for him and his friends was so big that he had to grease it by strapping on hammocks and skating down the skillet. So next, Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. So when I was in college, a guy named David Crockett shared the Christian faith with me. And so I can say, Davy Crockett shared God with me. When I was a wayward, trust me, wayward is a capital W. Independent, rugged spirit. Again, a lot of the same thing we'll see because we're in the West. So these guys represent from Missouri on west. He was more Missouri, but he went on to fight for a country in the Battle of the Alamo and was killed there with everybody else at the Alamo. I mean, guys like Sam Houston. And he had one bullet for everything he shot. He's one bullet. He was that good.
Wait, what? Oh.
And is that a legend?
Yeah.
Is that folklore? Did he ever miss? We don't know. Probably. Daniel Boone, kind of a similar figure. Hey, Jumbo. Like Davy Crockett, symbolizes that independent, rugged spirit of folks like us, right? Us Westerners and American Midwest also. So he actually built a town called Booneville in Missouri. I've been there. He also helped build the first plank road out of St. Louis west and helped pioneer the trail and protect the trail. He was a lawman, another crack shot, but his stories have become legendary folklore as well. But he did serve in Congress as well, so he was a real person who accomplished really important things. And he also made some peace treaties with Indians, so that was good. Josh, I'm just gonna hand these things to you. You just stick them on that table. Well, one of my favorite guys, Johnny Appleseed. I didn't really know a lot about Johnny Appleseed except he planted apple trees. Well, actually, he did more than that. He planted them by seed. And when you plant by seed instead of by cutting, you have a much sturdier, hardier tree and actually a better apple. So he only planted apple orchards with seeds. I didn't know that. But he had a lot of apple orchards. He was probably worth about $300,000 in his day, which is millions today. But he wore no shoes half the time. He dressed in the same clothes. He was very humble, maybe a little eccentric. It was a long time ago, right? We're talking 1774. John Chapman, by the way, was his real name. But look at the territory he covered, planting orchards. So while still alive, he became an icon. He became a folk legend. He was kind, he was generous, and all that. All right, next one. Thanks, Josh. Sitting Bull was a Lakota, and we called the Sioux. There were actually 7 Lakota tribes, so the name Sioux came from the white man. He was the chief warrior defender of his people. I read a fantastic book about Sitting Bull. It's made for teenagers like me. I like teenage books because they're thin and they get to the chase. But this is in his words. It's really well done. As is Black Elk Speaks, another great hero I'm not going to get to cover, but a book worth reading. These people tried to defend their people until they had to sign treaties because there's just no way they're going to survive. His name, Tatanka, means Sitting Bull. Like a mighty buffalo, he didn't back down. He was tough warrior. He was the toughest of all his compatriots. He was the fastest on a horse, the most accurate with a spear or an arrow. He's finally elected chief of all the Lakota or Sioux. He led battles against the Wasichus, white soldiers, who massacred their buffalo. They're taking away their livelihood. We all know that. And also they're wiping out Lakota villages. It was manifest destiny. We need this land. We need those buffaloes to feed the soldiers and the railroad builders, and we're going to take it. But these warriors are the ones that defeated George Custer at the Battle of Little Big Horn. He was a good friend of Buffalo Bill Cody. In fact, there they are right there. And when Buffalo Bill Cody started his Wild West show, Sitting Bull actually went for a while and helped him out, which for an Indian chief, that was, I think, a pretty nice gesture. You probably got paid something too. Next. Okay, well, what's the last one, Jack? Sitting Bull, okay. Now we go to that compatriot, Wild Bill. He was truly a frontiersman. I couldn't put everything he did on 5 slides. He did so much. He defended wagon trains. Even as a teen, he defended a wagon train and shot an attacking Indian warrior, actually, as a 10-year-old. He was a Pony Express rider where he met Wild Bill Hickok, who was a crack shot. And during the Civil War, he joined the Union Army. He scouted with Wild Bill. He fought the Cheyenne. He earned the Medal of Honor. He hunted buffalo with Bat Masterson, another figure that I'm not going to be able to talk much about. Later, he pushed President Teddy Roosevelt, another folk hero, to establish national parks and protect buffalo after he had been killing them. He had like the record, that's why it's Buffalo Bill, for he had a pistol in each hand. He once got 16 buffalo in one pass. Back then, buffalo would just covered the land. As far as you could see was buffalo. So they didn't know, and they ate the meat. Later, some of these guys that Sitting Bull fought would just kill them for sport and leave the meat to rot.
It was,
That was wrong.
Mark, that was government policy. General Sheridan
Was butcher.
was in charge of that, and it was deliberate to eradicate the buffalo to force the Indian tribes to go into the reservations.
Thank you for sharing that. But by the way, that's what this club's all about, is people chipping in, so thank you. Yeah, Rip Van Winkle comes from Washington Irving. That's the other book I was not talking about besides Sleepy Hollow. But it's this is kind of a moral lesson. Here's this guy, friendly farmer, hikes into the Catskill Mountains in New York on the East Coast, and he meets a group of dwarfs. And he accepts a drink from them. Maybe today he accepts a drug, maybe it's fentanyl. And he falls asleep. Could have died, but he fell asleep. Now he's an old man with a long white beard, returns, everything's changed. This is pre-Revolutionary War when he sets out. So King George III was hanging on everyone's wall, but he wakes up and now it's George Washington, because we defeated the Redcoats. So you learn a little bit of history in Washington Irving books also. So moral lessons, all that, set in that Dutch culture of the Revolutionary War, pre-Revolutionary War. Wyatt Earp, legendary Western frontiersman, saloon keeper, gambler, lawman, gunslinger. We think of Wyatt Earp as a lawman. He was a rascal. He started off robbing trains and everything else too, our stagecoaches, but he finally did work as a policeman at the same time. He was also a professional gambler. So here he is, the sheriff, but he's in the gambling hall winning money. And that was allowed back then in the wild, wild west. Friends with gunman Doc Holliday, we all heard of. There's movies made about all these guys, right? He moved to Tombstone, Arizona territory in 1839. And his brothers, Warren, Morgan, Virgil, they all bought real estate. Then they had a feud with an outlaw gang, the Clintons, turned into the Battle of the OK Corral, which we've probably seen movies about. Anyway, his reputation grew, his legend grew. There was a biography, Wyatt Earp, Frontier West Marshal, or Frontier Marshal, and that established him as a legend. Next slide. Casey Jones, a locomotive engineer, a hero to all the railroaders, the engineers, a real person. He became a folk hero after dying in a train crash. He's the only person that died in it, with one hand on the train's whistle and the other on its brake. That's quote unquote. He grew up in Casey, Tennessee, therefore Casey Jones, working on railroads as a kid. Now in 1900, he's an engineer. He volunteers to take a sick co-worker's position on a night run from Memphis to Canton, Mississippi. And hurrying to make up lost time, he rounds a corner and there's a train on the track. And he does everything. He orders his, orders one guy to jump over, his fireman, who's tending the coal. But he didn't, he died. And so this ballad becomes popular about Casey Jones. And it's actually, Casey Jones has been written about, sung by many bands. Some balladeering, country western, some hard rocking guys like the Grateful Dead, but he's become a folklore, a living dead folk legend. Next. The Headless Horseman, again, Washington Irving. His books were very, very popular. He was a fantastic storyteller, and I got some stamps with him on it. I don't think I have the book out here, but I always thought, oh, this is the first horror story ever made. But really, it's about more than that. It's about this town that's kind of weird. People are kind of fascinated with some superstitions of the town, but some people say that's because there's an old native Indian chief that caused all this strange sights and visions and haunting atmosphere. But they're fascinated by these superstitions. And the most infamous is the commander-in-chief of all the powers of the air, the Headless Horseman. So he wasn't just this Headless Horseman, he was supposedly a Hessian trooper or leader on the battlefield. That would have been the guys that supported George Washington in the Revolutionary War to defeat the British. And his head was shot up by a cannonball. Lucky guy that he was. Now he's riding around trying to find his head. But Irving talks a little bit about how our war for independence wasn't so easy as some people may think of it today. So his lasts throughout the ages. All right, we all know about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Wild Bunch or the Hole in the Wall Gang. Not going to really, their hideouts, Hole in the Wall in Wyoming and Robbers Roost in Utah. Maybe that's in Wyoming too, but they made a movie with Robert Redford and it was good. One background. All right. So they fled to Argentina to escape the Pinkerton Detective Agency. And they factor in a lot of these Wild West bad guy stories because they were really good. Some great books about them alone. They're kind of folklore as well. But some say that they actually escaped from Argentina. Some say the Bolivian army had a shootout and killed them. And some of their relatives say, no, they made it to Oregon and they lived happily ever after.
Mark?
Yes.
Park City. Butch's sister swore for years and years and years that she talked to her brother in Park City in 1939. And then there's a story around 1940 or 41, Summit County Sheriff's deputy pulled over a car and he was driving kind of erratically and the deputy thought the guy might be drunk, so he took him into Colville where the sheriff's office was. And this guy's an old man and he swore he was Butch Cassidy. Well, they checked him and they said, well, he's not drunk, he's just kind of old and infirm and everything. That guy swore up and down he was Butch Cassidy.
Wow.
They had to let him go because he
That's
wasn't
what
drunk.
folklores and
Did he have a
folklores and
license?
legends are.
Yep.
Thank you for
What
sharing
did the
that.
license say?
Thank you. It's a good movie, by the way, if you ever want to go see it. Rob Redford just passed away, so this is timely. Yes, sir,
I
Steve.
imagine.
Okay.
Yes, Butch Cassidy.
Butch Cassidy has a nephew who is also an author. And he's written 3 different books about Butch Cassidy.
Fantastic.
He is on this group that believes that Butch did live after he was supposed to be
I
killed.
personally think he did too. There's other stories, even from American Indians, that
That's
talk about
right.
meeting him.
And
He was
it's-
quite the planner. He never killed anybody. Now, some of the other Wild Bunch did kill people, but he never personally shot anybody. And he personally gave some of the loot from train and stagecoach robberies, at least 9 big ones, to poor widows and people that have been affected negatively by the cattle barons that were taking over all the small ranches. And that's really the sad story. Not that he's robbed a couple trains, in my opinion.
And his real
What time
name
is it?
was,
I gotta hustle. Well, guys, I'm gonna probably do one more of these so that, oh yeah, we got till 7:30. Yeah, we'll do a couple more. Next slide, John Brown. Some people never remembered or heard of John Brown, but he was an abolitionist. He was a preacher. He really cared about freedom of getting rid of slavery. And so did the guy who wrote the song Amazing Grace, John Newton. He was a slave ship captain. So this is kind of the American equivalent. But this guy believed violence was worthy or okay to free the slaves. And so he led a raid on a federal armory. That was his first mistake. Don't mess with the feds. Harper's Ferry, Virginia. He intended to start a slave liberation movement that would spread to the South. So strong, convictly Puritan Christian, he believed he was an instrument of God, raised to strike the death blow to slavery. It was a sacred obligation. He believed that working to free the enslaved was following Christian ethics, including the Golden Rule and the Declaration of Independence, which states all men are created equal. So whether you agree with his violent tactics or not, he did have a cause, and a legend grew around him to some extent, although a lot of people have forgotten about this incident. Just like Butch Cassidy's past, what happened in 1939, 1940, World War II overshadowed a lot of this type of folklore, because we are fighting for our freedom and our life once again. So anyway, we forget a lot about the Civil War too.
So Mark,
Yes.
who was the Army officer that commanded the Marines who stormed the armory and arrested
Robert E. Lee, I don't.
Robert E. Lee.
Come on. That's a good one. I love John. We're in this veteran group at Black Rifle Coffee Company. He has the best stories.
He does.
And he was an old helicopter pilot and a fixed wing pilot in the Army. Joe Magarac, superhuman steelworker, hero to steelworkers. They know about him even today. We don't. So he was again like a John Henry or a Paul Bunyan, maybe based on a real guy at one point, super strong, but I don't know what it says. Was he based on a real guy? We don't really know. But it was written by a former steelworker, and he takes on a life of his own as arms the size of smokestacks, born in an iron ore mine, raised in a furnace, and made of solid steel, and they melted him down for his steel content later. That's what it says. So all these stories come about, and he's in an amusement park bending steel for the track for the roller coaster. There's still a statue of him. There he is. I don't know if the amusement park's still going. Next slide. Mike Fink, this is a real guy. This guy was a tough dude. He was the riverboats where they needed a long pole, like Lewis and Clark's boats, river boat oarmen, and whatever they call that, pole man keel boats on the Ohio, Mississippi rivers. Again, born in Pittsburgh, Indian scout. Unbeatable marksman. They used to shoot off their friends' heads well, they drank too, whiskey cups. Crazy. Anyway, notorious for his practical jokes and willingness to fight anyone that wouldn't laugh at his jokes. So he was kind of a real character. Davy Crockett called him half horse, half alligator, supposedly. Part of the legend, right? The legend grows. So they're featured in American Ballads, and this guy Kellogg wrote a children's book called Mike Fink Tall Tale. Now we hardly hear about him, but if you go to the riverboat guys, the Mark Twain types, Huck Finn types, they would remember him for sure. Next slide. Oh, Billy the Kid, yeah, gunslinger. He was not a good guy. But he had a rough beginning. Look at that, orphaned at age 15, arrested for stealing food to eat at 16. Moves to Arizona, kills a guy in a fight, goes back to New Mexico. Cattle rustlers, outlaw groups, well known in the West, killing Lincoln County Sheriff Andy Brady in what they called the Lincoln County War of 1878. Arrested by Pat Garrett, also a folklore type legendary lawman. Convicted of the murder, sentenced to hang, but he escapes, kills two of the sheriffs to escape. But finally Garrett finds him, shoots him, kills him. He was only 21 years old, Billy the Kid was. After his death, the story spread that he really didn't die, but they're almost 100% positive he did. But the legend endures because of films, he was a great guy to make a movie about, or a short clip for some budding filmmaker. 50 Western films. Next slide. And Sam Bass, he was more of a law man, but he really wasn't. He's an outlaw, train robber, led 2 gangs, Wild West, Black Hills Bandits, Bass Gang of Texas, orphaned again, age 14, raised by an abusive uncle. Left home at age 19, drifted west of Texas. I mean, his resume is very long too. He worked some really hard jobs, legitimate jobs, driving cattle from Texas to Montana. That's not an easy thing in Nebraska. But he squandered all his money in the Black Hills Gold Rush. And then you say, wow, we gotta make money, so they rob a train, Union Pacific train. Guess what? Biggest train robbery ever in history to this date. 60,000 newly minted San Francisco gold pieces. You want to see one? I don't have one. Yeah, returns to Texas, robs more stagecoaches, finally set up in an ambush. I don't know who set him up, but he died in a gun battle with Texas Rangers. Don't mess with Chuck Norris. All right, Roy Bean, he was a character judge. Interesting enough, he has a long history of working hard and doing things, not always the right thing. But he finally becomes a judge. Because out west, you could get away with anything. And his brother Sam, they run a trading post in Chihuahua, Mexico, moves to San Diego. His brother becomes the first mayor of San Diego right after California is admitted as the state of the union because of the gold rush. They admitted California because all the gold and all the people flooding it, had enough people to qualify as a state. His brother's the mayor, goes back to Texas, operates a saloon in Beanville, named after himself, becomes a judge in Pecos County finally, and in his latter years, all the troublemaking and good stuff he did, he becomes a very kind, generous person helping the poor. Next slide. Is that part of the legend or is that true? Actually, that part might be true. Bigfoot Wallace, another Texas folk hero. Don't really have time to talk much about him, but he was big, 6'2", 240 pounds, large boots, and he was actually a straight shooting guy. Really was. Finally, the adventures of Bigfoot Wallace, the Texas Rangers helped establish him as a folk hero. So often, it's storytelling and then a book or films that take these guys from really good American to folklore status. Yeah, Jesse James, boy, he was trouble. He's pro-Confederate in Missouri. He fought with guerrillas that were really known for like massacring whoever they were fighting, abolitionists or Union soldiers. They could fight, they could shoot, but they weren't nice. And his brother and him robbed banks, stagecoaches. Somehow they survived for a long time. From 1882, he's finally shot and killed by a recruit in his own gang that wants money and pardon for killing Jesse James. He obviously had skill sets to survive that long, and he's obviously been made famous if you look at all that. They call the James Gang. There's even a band called the James Gang.
Joe Walsh.
Yeah.
Robert Ford,
He's now in the Eagles, right?
Mark.
Huh.
Bob Ford actually toured. He would go to theaters, and he
Bragging about it, making
bragging
money
about
out of it.
killing Jesse James.
And he was actually killed by somebody disgruntled with him.
Yeah,
But his partner made more
he
money. or
wasn't a
something.
sympathetic character.
Not many people know what John was. That's great. Dime novels. Who's heard of a dime novel? Well, back then you could buy a novel for a dime. That's what they called them, dime novels. All right, next slide. Oh boy. Uncle David Lane was a storyteller. He's a mighty hunter. That should be hunter. And I have to dig to find out about this guy, but he was really well known in North Carolina as a storyteller. So among the hunting community, he's still known out east. Next slide. Brer Rabbit and Friends, trickster folklore. So this guy, Brer Rabbit, was a trickster, but it comes from African folklore transmitted by slaves, New World. Starts a life of its own, popularized by this guy, Joel Chandler Harris, in a series of books about Brer Rabbit and his friends. So among oppressed people, small, weak, but ingenious force can overcome a larger, stronger, but dull-witted power.
The tar baby.
Yeah, that's all. And it's a whole series of stories. One famous one, Tar Baby, and that's what launched Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox. And it's a large group. Uncle Remus was the character telling the story in the books. Next slide. Sweet Betsy Pie. Hey, this is the last one. This comes from a song, and it's about the tough, arduous journey along the trails, the Mormon Trail, Oregon Trail, California Trail, on the way to California Gold Rush. And some of the lyrics in the song are a little rough. But The first line's not so bad. Did you ever hear tell of sweet Betsy from Pike who crossed the White Mountains with her lover Ike, 2 yoke of cattle, a large yellow dog, and a Shanghai rooster, and 1 spotted hog? The folklore tale, Hard West Trail, and it was a hard trail. And that song was sung, at least in part, in A Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with, with our very own Robert Redford. So and then they made a book which sort of sets it. And it was at American Folklore Society meeting. So I never heard of her, but she's the last coin in the series of 20, our last ingot in a series of 24 silver ingots. And so she kind of, that's what it's about. It keeps the story of that true hard journey from Missouri or even further back to California, Oregon, other areas. And that is the last one. Let's go. And then myths, ghost stories, supernatural, just keep going. Headless Horseman would be one. Native American legends, spirits would be another. Creation stories. Some of these are really, this is a whole presentation in itself. If I could find some of the old trade dollars that Jefferson gave Lewis and Clark and others to give to the Indian chiefs, if I had $400,000, I could buy one. Next, haunted locations. There's a lot of stuff about haunted locations in folklore and storytelling. Next. Okay, what keeps us alive? Music, festivals, storytelling, books, films. Oral tradition was the original way of doing it. Community bonding. So what it does is it brings people together. This folklore, and in different religious communities, like Utah, people were hard pressed to survive here, the original settlers, and so they have folklore right here. It inspires literature, shapes film, and it's found on coin stamps and memorabilia, like right up here. Next slide. And that's it. We talked about all this stuff.